Welcome to the Inner Athlete Podcast. I'm your host, Trent, and this is the show where we dive into all things youth athlete development, strength and conditioning, and the mindset needed to thrive on and off the field. Whether you're a parent looking to support your child's athletic journey, a coach seeking fresh insights, or an athlete ready to take your game to the next level, you're in the right place. Before we jump in, make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay updated on our latest episodes. If you enjoy the show, please give us a like, share it with your friends, and help us reach even more people who can benefit from these insights. Together, we can empower the next generation of athletes to perform at their best. Now, let's get into it.
Welcome back to the Inner Athlete Podcast. I've got another special guest, I think. But this time around, we can actually talk properly. Both been out with a cold, flu, some sort of, some sort of virus. But it's actually good to see you again, Colby. This is Colby Zaph. Tell us a little bit about yourself and, why are you here today?
We've been talking about this for a while, and so my name's Colby Zaph, and I'm one of the co-founders, along with my wife Linda Fletcher, of Melbourne Lacrosse Academy. And this is an academy that we started about this time last year. We started talking, the discussions around setting up this sort of a program and a pathway for elite lacrosse athletes to realize their true potential. I guess it was luck, and I guess it was a bit of serendipity that I got encountered with you, and we share the exact same vision of what we were hoping to get out of this for our kids. It's just been a great year to start. So
it was kind of a funny backstory, anyways, but we won't go too much into that as well. But I guess, talk to us about your history with lacrosse and kind of like how do you actually get to this point. Obviously, you're not, you got an accent, you're not from Australia, and like how did you actually get into the sport itself?
So I guess the thing is I'm from Canada, and lacrosse is a really popular sport there, but I didn't play a lot of lacrosse. I'm an ice hockey player. I played quite competitively all the way up until my 20s. But I always did play lacrosse, and I always loved lacrosse, and I was playing, relatively competitively. But I'm from a part of Canada which is lacrosse is not a hotbed. It's from Saskatchewan in the center, which is hockey and curling in that order. And then I started playing lacrosse, and we were one of the first people to play lacrosse in Saskatchewan. And then I sort of did it, but not really did it with a good investment. And so when we moved to Australia, I have a son who can't ice skate, which is a black mark on a Canadian passport. So I had to get him to do something that was one Canadian sport. And so we started picking up the lacrosse stick when he was about 8 or 9, and he loved it. And so he started playing. And so that got my passion back for the sport and got me back involved in the game itself, and really trying to sort of get involved and do everything I possibly can. Growing up, I loved lacrosse. In fact, I loved lacrosse more than hockey, I think, at some points, but I wasn't good enough to do it. My brother, who's younger than me, 3 years, he actually played professional for 5 years, 10 years in Rochester and then NLL. So he was the professional player. So he started a couple of years younger than me, and that was all that it took, was that difference in 3 years and playing in a much more competitive league. And so he made it to the professional leagues from doing that. So.
Yeah, and then why move to Australia? What was the plan there?
Moving to Australia was completely about quality of life, and with my job. I'm a professor at Monash University. And so the academic field, there's lots of movement around. And when the opportunity came to move to Melbourne, it was more of a lifestyle choice rather than moving here for any other reason than that. So we've been here now 10 years, and we're Australians now. So this is our home, and this is where we'll call home forever now. So.
Yeah, and then you spoke about Luke playing, obviously getting to the sport, and it's like, how did you actually get those first few steps into the lacrosse scene in Melbourne?
So just to set the scene for everybody, lacrosse is a relatively, I want to say niche sport, but I want to say it's one of those small sports that's sneakily big. There's within Melbourne itself, there's 11 clubs that play. There's probably over 500-600 registered players that play lacrosse in the general area, starting is actually quite easy. You just contact a club that's nearby, and you can start joining in the lacrosse thing. There's levels that are set by the governing body, Lacrosse Victoria, that has the competitions that the kids can play in, from under 10, under 12, under 14, under 16, all the way up to the senior men. And so getting involved is actually one of the easiest steps. And I'm sure everybody who's got a child or was a child has always played lacrosse at school. One of those plastic sticks where the gym teacher or PE teacher will pull out the plastic lacrosse sticks and you'll throw the tennis balls around. And that's sort of the first experience a lot of people have with that. Sometimes there'll be clinics, people coming in from other clubs to do the clinics with the kids and work with them. But then from that transition from school to the club and then onward is sort of where we got involved.
Yeah, and then how is he actually finding it? So now he's at with MCC. Actually, go back one step, because a lot of people don't. I think Chad spoke about in previous episodes about the history of lacrosse.
Yeah,
what's the history of lacrosse in Australia?
So history of lacrosse in Australia is very, very old. So the first lacrosse games were played in 1860s, 1870s, and the first clubs that were started in around 1890, 1885. I think the first club was Melbourne University. They started their first club. The Melbourne Cricket Club, MCC, started a lacrosse club in 1896. And so really these clubs have been involved for a long time. And games were played originally at the Albert Cricket Ground. It was called something else back in the old days. But it was a very, very popular sport, very popular. And it was the history of lacrosse in Australia is really deep and really sort of a rich history of players, mostly Canadians coming over. There was one guy, specifically Lambton Mount, who brought the game with him and the rules and all of the equipment and sort of setting this up and sort of really established lacrosse in Australia over 125, 130 years ago. And so it really has a long history in this country, and it's a part of the culture for sure.
Then what happened, obviously?
So I think the biggest thing that happened was the war. Second World War, there was a lot of the wars in general, but the wars definitely took away a lot of the playing players and killed a lot of them and or got them injured. And then after the Second World War, there was the immigration of sort of the Greeks and Italians.
The Europeans.
The Europeans, they brought in soccer. And soccer came, and then that became sort of, that transitioned the major sports, which were sort of horse racing, footy and lacrosse were sort of the major sports of the early 1900s, late 1800s, and then it sort of switched over to soccer slowly. And so there's always been a sort of an undercurrent of lacrosse in Australia. It's always been there. Australia's always ranked in the top 3 or 4 in the world. So around the world, there's Canada, US are number 1 and 2 interchangeably. And it's a relatively big step down, but then there's Australia, England, Japan. But Australia is perennially the top 3 in the world for lacrosse. Yeah.
So with some more niche sports, there's always like a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. So I guess Australia would be in that tier 2.
Exactly. They have competed against Canada in a sense. I mean, they have beaten Canada and North America in the past, but they're one-offs and they're very rare. And lately, games against Canada and US are lost by 15 to 20 goals. So I think they're big losses. They're not pushing the competition between those teams at this point right now. So that's exactly how we're sort of getting involved is that I think that Australia has the capacity to be at that level. It's just a matter of getting our kids, the training that like they see in Canada and America, where they're starting younger, but they're not starting younger. They're just getting more competent coaching, more overall coaching, and more lacrosse experience.
And the resources available, because with the Rio Games, obviously the Olympic Games, probably like the 2000, like when the millennial became the new millennial. What a lot of the hosting nations, what they did is they built these new facilities, and part of the point is actually to leave a lasting legacy. And you could contend that some countries did a good job, some countries, they're not doing very well. But there's one thing that stood out to me is from a swimming side with Rio, that in 2016 when they hosted, obviously they didn't have swimmers. Swimmers is not a national sport. It's not something they really do. But I think it was in either the London game, no, not London. It was either Tokyo or it was Paris just recently. They actually had finalists. I think one of the swimmers actually end up making a final in swimming. So part of it is having those resources available. That's obviously at a larger scale. Yeah. Leaving a lasting legacy, but it unfortunately is one of those things you do have to have the resources in play.
Well, I think that sort of leads us into this idea of what's the future for lacrosse in Australia, and really the fact that lacrosse has now been added to Olympic sport for LA 28. and there's the funding that comes with that. There's a real opportunity at this point in time right now to try and build on that, exactly that, those resources, that ability to sort of draw stronger athletes in, better athletes, funding to get those people going, and to build for that 28 and hopefully for 32. That would be the goal, is that'll stay in the Olympics for 32 when it comes to Brisbane, and then that will be a huge boost for Australian lacrosse.
Yeah, no, I agree. And then how MLA, obviously, you discussed briefly, just like, we kind of had through happenstance essentially, in terms of how we got to this point. And but what was kind of like the initial thinking and the conversations that you had with Linda in terms of, you wanted to do this, but you didn't have the means or the people around?
So like I said, the clubs are great. There's 11 clubs in that. They're really good at recruiting kids. They're really good at getting kids into the game and all that. But once they're there, identifying those elite kids, 1 or 2 per club, per age group sort of thing, how do you support them and how do you make them to that next level? And so the way that the programs work in Australia is that at the under 14, 15 level, they form teams that go to nationals. And so these teams bring the best players of all the different clubs together and they play. And this is where this discussion sort of started last year. Our son made this club. It's called the under 15 representative team. And all the different clubs sent their best players. And these kids are all playing together for the first time. And you could see there was something there. It was really good. When you bring good players together, playing at a high level, their play gets better and their practices are better and everything is better about it. And we were thinking about this and thinking, how can we get this to happen year round? Because this is what they need, right? And you could see the gaps. You could see that some of the kids weren't in good shape. Some of the kids couldn't pass and catch as well as others. Some of the kids didn't have the right field sense, and give them the opportunity. Because when they're practicing with their club, they're practicing with kids that are there just for fun. And it's more of like a rec league sort of thing. And so to bring those kids to an elite level, they need to work out more. They need to be stronger. And this discussion also started with my wife, who is one of our daughters is a ballerina, and she does ballet training. And the level of expectation to get into the Australian Ballet School and the levels of training that's required for that is heads and tails above what was going on with lacrosse. They were practicing once a week for 2 hours if everybody showed up, and it was sort of a common thing. And we realized that if they want to get better, they need to get a stick in their hands. They need to get in good shape. They need to understand their bodies. They need to understand nutrition. They need to understand the psychology of sport. They need to understand all this, and they need coaching from somebody who understands how to play the game properly from day one. And so this is where this conversation started, and it was really just a thought process until I got past your name, and then we started talking. And as soon as we started talking, I realized that this was the perfect opportunity for this thing. And so, building on your experience with youth athletes, building on the goal that we have long term. We don't want to do things rushed. We don't want to do it quickly. We want to do this, build these kids up over time, give them all the tools that they have to get stronger, faster, fitter, and then finding that next stage was finding the lacrosse coach. Right, and then that was where Chad came in and really sort of, again, a serendipity. It was. I think all these things were made to be trying to find a coach that was outside of the system, that would come and look at this, had experience in America, had experience coaching, had a real clear vision of what he wanted to do, and when we put it all together, it just worked beautifully. And it was a great first year as we did this.
Yeah, because for me there was a couple of key things. There's number one, that you're going outside of what's actually already available sometimes, because if you already have what's already available, it's very hard to actually grow it from there. When you've got someone who's gone to a system that's a lot better, that's ranked number one in the world, from men's and women's perspective, it makes sense to draw someone from that pool and actually bringing them over here to actually start to almost like have the influence of, if your goal is actually become the best usually lead signs of success. So the idea is then you bring in with Chad or whoever it may be moving forward, whoever, that they have that success at that level. They know what the standards are to become successful or to play college or to become professional. And then you just bring that in, and then you can start making sure that you've got enough of the right people around that actually have the right vision, and then understanding and resources and experience to be able to kind of create the environment for the kids actually almost to lift from.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's really easy to identify those one or two kids that you know are going to do well, right? They're just really good players, or their parents who are on Team Australia. They have the stick in their hand. You can just tell there's some kids but there's some kids that they're not there yet, right? The word "yet" comes in. It's like they just need a little bit of training, a little bit of focus, and they could become the next best player in the world. But right now, maybe they don't absolutely look like it. But with the right guidance, with the right process, you could be surprised about these kids. And that's why I really want to identify those kids and give those kids that really want to do it. And the ones that really want to do it is the ones we had to work with, which is great. Yeah.
And the biggest thing is like with the boys' side, it's the growth and development is like it's such a big jump when they're between the ages of 14 to 16 years old, when they start growing, getting taller, getting stronger, be able to move a little bit more differently, more explosively. But how do you actually set them up to be able to best take advantage of that moving forward? And then what's the standard in relative to the US as well of like what they're likely to come up against if they do make the national team, they do start going traveling,
Exactly.
And if their goal is to make trials for the Australian squad for 28 or 32 in the games, are they going to be physically prepared for that? Because you might have the best in Australia, but how prepared are they to compete against the best in the world?
Exactly. And I think that's a really good point, is that our best in Australia does really well against everybody except for Canada and US. We're not there yet. We're not even close yet. And the way that we get better is by training with them, working with them, getting kids over there, playing college lacrosse, playing with those kids, and getting to that level and understanding what that level is. Like it's rare right now in the professional leagues. There's no Australians right now. There were a couple in the past, but there's none right now. There's some that are playing in Canada, and there's a growing number going to play college lacrosse in America. And when those kids come back, they're just so much better. You can just see it. Their expectations are higher. They're practicing with really good players. They're in the gym every other day. They're working out. They have got a plan. They know exactly what they need to do. And that's what we just want to instill in our younger kids now, that this is the plan, this is the process, and this is how we're going to get you to that point. Yeah.
And then how did from your perspective, how do you believe the first year went?
When we first talked about it, the goal was, if we can get 12 kids and we can run this so the program that we ran for the MLA for the first year was what we called it the winter program, and it was literally the elite program. It was 16 weeks of conditioning, strength and conditioning, speed and agility, led by Trent, and then it was lacrosse, led by Chad, and that was a mix of skill-based stuff, fundamentals, but also rigorous drills and some gameplay at the end and all that. And we ended up with 11 players in our group, and I would say that the program for the first time through couldn't have gone any better. There were things we could have done better, I think, and I can talk about those. But I think in general, the kids that we got were amazing. The parents that supported them were amazing. The coaching was amazing. The facilities were amazing. We had a little bit of growing pains in trying to get access to facilities, but everybody was really flexible about it. We had a great group of players, and when they showed up, they were there to work and they were there to listen. And I don't think we could have got any luckier with the people, the places, and the things that we did. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, I think utilizing Balmoral Secondary was the best move, and obviously we had to use other facilities as well. But yeah, I think the first time running a program like this, I think it went really, really well. All things considered, obviously there was roadblocks and logistical issues and all that jazz, and I think the kids were great, and I think they were very appreciative of the program itself, and that's probably what I saw the most of. That you could, the best part is like the training that we do is more just a means to an end. Now what I mean by that is like, obviously I'm trying to get them faster, stronger, more explosive. We did helped them out with some contact work, improving their throwing power, understanding more of that human mechanics side to make them some more efficient. And the parents actually start to see that. And I think that's probably one of the biggest wins. Obviously, you want to see the kids actually be able to experience it, like they actually become more standouts than anything else. But then also seeing the parents actually seeing it's like, all right, we invested this, the time and the money and also, the logistics and the headaches that might come with it. Exactly, yeah. But they actually saw the return and actually see like their kids have actually grown because of it. Like, yes, it is it's a 14, 16 week program, and obviously it requires a commitment. You got kids traveling 45 to 1 hour 15 just to get the training, and they're getting home really late at night. But you just kind of like see their faces when they're going home. There's like it's like I think every parent would want to see their kid just almost like buzzing after training. It was like how well it was going, and the impact it's actually having in terms of their games.
That's a wrap for part 1 of this episode on the Inner Athlete podcast. We've covered some incredible insights today, but there's still so much more to come. Make sure to tune in to part 2 for the rest of the conversation. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, give us a like, and share it with your network to help us reach even more listeners like you. Thanks for joining me, and I'll catch you in part 2.